I, 28 male, work as a senior database administrator for a mid-sized logistics firm here in the States. Let me give you some background on what that actually means for my daily life. Due to the sensitive nature of my job, my phone is essentially a biometric vault. It contains multi-factor authentication tokens for corporate servers, encrypted client data, and proprietary company architecture. I am legally bound by ironclad non-disclosure agreements and strict IT policies to protect this device with my life. At the time all this went down, my girlfriend, 26 female, and I had been living together in my apartment for about 8 months. We'd been dating for 2 years total. Our relationship was generally okay, though looking back, there were massive red flags I ignored. She had a severe habit of needing things done exactly her way, and she possessed a subtle, simmering entitlement. If we disagreed, she wouldn't yell. She would just relentlessly chip away at my boundaries until I compromised just to keep the peace. I thought I was being a supportive partner. In reality, I was just a doormat. It was a completely standard Tuesday evening. We were eating dinner at the kitchen island, having some takeout, with the television playing quietly in the living room. It was mundane, ordinary. Then, out of nowhere, she set her fork down, stared directly at me with this chillingly blank expression, and extended her hand palm up across the granite counter. "Give me your phone password," she demanded. There was no preamble, no conversation leading up to it. We hadn't been arguing about trust or social media. It was just a flat, uncompromising order. I honestly thought she was joking, or maybe she needed to look up a quick recipe because her phone was dead. But I glanced over, and her phone was sitting right next to her plate, the screen glowing with a fresh text notification. I asked her what she was talking about and why she needed it. She crossed her arms, her posture instantly defensive and aggressive. Trust is transparency. If we are going to build a real life together, I need full access to your devices. I want your passcode right now, and I want my Face ID registered in your security settings before we go to sleep. I was completely blindsided. I patiently explained to her, as I had multiple times in the past when she brought up open phone policies, that my device is heavily restricted by my employer's IT department. Handing over access isn't just a breach of my personal privacy, which I value highly, but it is a direct violation of my employment contract and federal data compliance laws. Her expression hardened into a glare. Her voice dropped an octave, dripping with condescension. "Give me your phone password right now, or we're done. I am not going to be with a man who hides things from me. You either prove you have nothing to hide, or I am walking out that door." She leaned back on her stool with the most incredibly smug, entitled look on her face I have ever seen on a human being. She was absolutely 100% certain I would panic. She thought I would instantly start backpedaling, apologizing profusely for making her feel insecure, and slide my unlocked phone across the counter to prove my loyalty. She was banking entirely on my historical preference for a quiet life over a confrontation. I sat there for a few seconds, looking at the woman I thought I was going to marry, realizing she was trying to manipulate me through an ultimatum. I set my fork down. I looked her dead in the eyes. "We're done then." The smugness evaporated instantly. It was like watching a computer glitch. Her eyes went wide, and she sputtered, asking if I was serious. I told her I was entirely serious. I told her I do not negotiate with ultimatums, and I absolutely do not tolerate baseless, manipulative demands regarding my private property and my career. I stood up, walked calmly to the hallway closet, pulled out her large overnight duffel bag, and dropped it at her feet. I told her to pack whatever she needed for the next few days and that we could arrange a mutually agreeable time for her to collect the rest of her furniture over the weekend. She erupted. She went from 0 to absolute screaming hysterics in a millisecond. She started screaming at the top of her lungs, accusing me of cheating, claiming I was gaslighting her and calling me every name in the book. She grabbed a heavy ceramic drink coaster and hurled it across the room. It shattered loudly against the drywall, leaving a dent. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself against her wild accusations. I simply stood by the front door, opened it, and waited. When she realized screaming wasn't getting a reaction out of me, she resorted to slamming cabinets. She aggressively shoved her expensive toiletries and a bunch of clothes into the bag. She snatched her own phone off the counter, marched to the front door, glared at me with pure venom, and told me I would be begging her to come back by morning. She walked out into the hallway. The moment the door cleared the frame, I shut it. I locked the deadbolt. I engaged the heavy steel chain. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, navigated to her contact profile, and blocked her number. I then systematically blocked her on every single social media platform. I didn't feel heartbroken. I didn't feel a sense of loss. Instead, I felt a sharp, persistent sense of suspicion. Her behavior was way too extreme for a simple boundary dispute or a moment of insecurity. She genuinely thought I would cave. 2 full days passed. I went to work. I went to the gym. I enjoyed the incredible, stress-free silence in my apartment. I didn't reach out once. On Thursday night, at approximately 11:30 p.m., my doorbell rang violently. It wasn't a normal ring. Someone was mashing the button repeatedly. I pulled up the security camera application on my phone. Girlfriend was standing on my welcome mat. She was sobbing hysterically. Her makeup was smeared all over her cheeks, and she was hugging her arms against the cold. She looked entirely broken and pathetic. I walked to the door and unlocked the deadbolt, but I kept the heavy steel chain firmly engaged. I opened the door, just the few inches the chain allowed. She pressed her face near the gap, tears streaming down her face, pleading with me. She said she was so sorry. She was just feeling deeply insecure. She had been reading toxic relationship advice online, and she let her anxiety completely control her. She begged me to just let her inside so we could sit down, talk like adults, and fix things. I looked at her without an ounce of sympathy. I told her the relationship was permanently terminated. I informed her that she needed to contact me via email to schedule a time to remove her remaining belongings, and that we had nothing left to discuss. The transformation was terrifying. It was instantaneous. The hysterical sobbing stopped mid-breath. Her posture straightened up perfectly. The deep sorrow in her eyes vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated, psychotic rage. "Let me in right now," she hissed, her voice completely steady. "I live here. You can't legally lock me out of my own apartment." I reminded her that she was not on the lease. She had never contributed a single dime to the rent, and her residency was legally classified as a month-to-month tenancy at will, which had been officially revoked when she voluntarily moved her daily essentials out 2 days prior. I shut the door right in her face and threw the deadbolt. 45 minutes later, heavy, authoritative knocking rattled my door. "Police department, open up." I checked the camera. 2 uniformed police officers were standing in the hallway. Girlfriend was standing a few feet behind them, arms crossed, sporting a deeply victorious smirk. I opened the door. The lead officer asked if I was the resident. I confirmed I was. He then stated that they were responding to a 911 call regarding a domestic disturbance and a report of stolen property. Girlfriend had told dispatch that we had a minor argument, that I had physically forced her out of her own apartment, and here is the absolute kicker, that I was currently holding her mobile phone hostage inside and refusing to return it. She wasn't trying to get her stuff back. She was trying to use armed law enforcement to force me to hand over a device so she could get her hands on my phone. The officer asked me to step into the hallway and asked point-blank if I was in possession of her phone. I remained completely calm. I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up. "Officer," I said, keeping my voice even. "This is my device. It is a corporate-issued phone. I have not stolen anything from this woman. Furthermore, the apartment is leased solely in my name, and she voluntarily vacated the premises on Tuesday." Girlfriend immediately stepped forward, pointing frantically at my hand. "That's a lie. That's my phone." He snatched it out of my hand. "Make him unlock it right now. My personal photos and banking apps are on there." She was incredibly good at playing the victim. The officer asked for my identification. I provided my state driver's license. I then politely asked the officer for permission to reach back inside my apartment just to grab my laptop from the entryway table. He agreed, keeping a close eye on me. I opened my laptop, connected to my Wi-Fi, and pulled up my cellular carrier's billing portal. I navigated to the device management page and showed the officer the digital receipt for the exact phone in my hand, complete with the matching IMEI number, officially registered to my name and my corporate account. To be absolutely thorough, the officer asked me to pull up the IMEI in the phone settings. He verified the numbers on my laptop screen perfectly matched the numbers on the phone.
He handed my phone back to me.
He then turned his entire body toward girlfriend. His tone shifted from investigative to incredibly stern. He informed her that filing a false police report is a Class A misdemeanor under state law, punishable by heavy fines and up to a year in county jail. He explained very clearly that she had just wasted emergency municipal resources and was dangerously close to being placed in handcuffs for making a false statement to a peace officer. Her smugness vanished. She immediately began stammering, reverting back to the crying victim routine, claiming she was just confused, highly emotional, and must have misplaced her phone in her car. The officers were not amused in the slightest. They instructed her to leave the premises immediately. They turned to me and advised that if she returned, I could formally trespass her. I watched through the peephole as they escorted her to the elevator. The police incident confirmed my darkest suspicions. This was not about a bruised ego. This was not about relationship trust issues. She was desperate. She was willing to risk criminal charges and jail time just to get her hands on my specific phone. I sat at my kitchen island, heart pounding, and mentally retraced the last few weeks, looking for any anomaly, any weird request, anything out of the ordinary. Then it hit me like a freight train. 3 weeks prior, girlfriend's personal laptop had suffered a catastrophic motherboard failure. She had been pacing the apartment, frantically trying to send an urgent document for her freelance gig. I had handed her my phone, unlocked it, and allowed her to log into her cloud storage account via my mobile web browser to access her files. She downloaded her file, emailed it, thanked me, and handed my phone back. I immediately opened the web browser on my phone. I navigated to the cloud storage provider's website. The session was still active. She had checked the Keep Me Signed In box and, in her rush, forgot to manually log out. I tapped the cloud drive icon. The directory populated. It was mostly mundane folders at first glance: vacation photos, old college essays, recipes. But at the very bottom, there was a locked folder labeled Archived Invoices 2026. I bypassed the lock using the active session credentials. The folder contained dozens of highly detailed PDF documents and a sprawling, complex Excel spreadsheet. I opened the first PDF. It was an invoice from a logistics consulting firm billing my exact employer for supply chain optimization analysis. The glaring problem was that I am a senior database administrator. I know our vendor and contractor database intimately. This consulting firm did not exist in our system. I opened the spreadsheet. It was a master ledger. It meticulously tracked invoice dates, billing amounts, fake tax ID numbers, and banking routing numbers. Next to every single routing number were initials. Half the entries had girlfriend's initials. The other half had the initials of a coworker of mine, a senior accounts payable manager at my company who had authorization to approve external vendor payments up to $50,000 without executive oversight. The horrifying reality of the situation locked into place. Girlfriend and my coworker were executing a massive, highly coordinated billing scheme. They had registered dummy limited liability companies. Coworker was generating and internally approving fake invoices within our company's accounting software. The companies seamlessly paid the dummy LLCs, and girlfriend and coworker were splitting the embezzled funds through a series of shell bank accounts. Girlfriend must have realized, perhaps after coworker tipped her off about an upcoming, routine IT security sweep, that her cloud account was still actively logged in on my highly secure, easily auditable corporate device. If my company's automated security software flagged the unusual cloud traffic, or if I simply opened my browser, the entire federal crime would be exposed. She desperately needed my passcode to clear the browser cache and log out. When I refused her sudden ultimatum, she panicked. The sheer, breathtaking entitlement of her actions was staggering. She wasn't just stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars, she was aggressively demanding my compliance to cover up a federal crime, fully willing to manipulate my emotions and weaponize the police to protect her grift. The next afternoon, Things escalated legally. I received a certified email. It was from a private attorney retained by girlfriend. The subject line read, "Notice of Intent, Civil Litigation Regarding Conversion of Digital Assets." The letter was an absolute masterpiece of legal intimidation and baseless threats. The lawyer claimed I was unlawfully withholding digital property belonging to his client. He formally demanded that I immediately surrender my mobile device to a third-party forensic firm of his choosing to have his client's proprietary data wiped. If I failed to comply within 48 hours, they would file a civil suit for conversion and seek a writ of replevin to have a judge order the sheriff's department to physically seize my phone. It was a total bluff. Under U.S. law, a writ of replevin requires demonstrating to a judge that I am wrongfully holding physical property that legally belongs to her. She could never prove that. Furthermore, no judge in the country is going to issue a physical seizure order for a corporate-owned device over a logged-in web browser without a massive, drawn-out evidentiary hearing. They were trying to scare me into destroying the evidence for them because they knew the clock was ticking. I didn't reply to the attorney. I didn't say a word. I sat down at my computer, securely mirrored my phone's screen using developer tools, and downloaded the entire contents of her cloud folder. I exported the metadata, the timestamps, and the IP logs. I created 3 separate, highly encrypted backups on physical flash drives. First thing Monday morning, I completely bypassed my immediate supervisor. I walked directly to the executive floor and requested an emergency, closed-door meeting with our company's general counsel. I sat in his plush office, placed one of the encrypted flash drives on his mahogany desk, and provided the decryption key on a slip of paper. I explained exactly how I acquired the data, ensuring I clarified that the cloud session was left open on my company-issued device, making it legally subject to our corporate acceptable use and monitoring policy. I outlined the dummy LLCs, the fake invoices, and explicitly named the coworker involved in the accounts payable department. The general counsel reviewed the spreadsheet for less than 2 minutes. The color drained from his face. He picked up his phone and immediately summoned the director of corporate security and our external forensic auditing firm. Because the embezzlement utilized electronic banking systems to transfer fraudulent funds across state lines to the dummy LLC accounts, this was no longer a simple internal corporate theft. It constituted felony wire fraud. The company's legal team immediately contacted the local field office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is where the timeline slows down because federal wheels turn agonizingly slow. The FBI doesn't just kick down doors immediately in white-collar cases. They build airtight cases. 2 days after my meeting, federal agents arrived at our office. I voluntarily surrendered my phone to the agents so they could extract the browser session data and the cached files, maintaining a strict, legally sound chain of custody. For the next 5 months, I had to act like everything was normal. Coworker was quietly placed on paid administrative leave under the guise of a departmental restructuring, while the Fed subpoenaed bank records and tore through his digital footprint. Finally, the hammer dropped. A federal grand jury handed down a massive, multi-count indictment. Coworker was arrested by federal agents in the parking lot of a grocery store. The following morning at 6 a.m., the FBI executed a raid at girlfriend's mother's house, where girlfriend had been living since our breakup. The sheer delusion and entitlement did not stop with the arrest. That very evening, my personal inbox began filling with frantic, unhinged emails from girlfriend's mother. She called me a vindictive, heartless monster. She demanded that I immediately go to the police precinct and tell them I fabricated the digital evidence. She insisted that I owed it to her daughter to fix this tiny misunderstanding because people in relationships make mistakes and you should support the people you love.